Welcome back. How are we doing? Best break ever. Come on back and join us. Another word, another valuable word term to know is defeasance. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Happens to the worst of us. Defeasance, canceling of the mortgage debt. The borrower has the right to pay it off. That's what defeasance is about. It could be a positive thing. Borrower won the lottery. Gosh, somebody won, like 2 people in another state, I think, won what, $1 billion? I don't even know, 780 by the time they're done. So they might want to pay off their mortgage. They might want to exercise defeasance. They might want to sell it and buy something a little bigger, right? Not that they should. Warren Buffett, anyone? It could also be this period of time in a negative situation like foreclosure. They got the foreclosure letter and the bank says, good news, sorry, we're having to foreclose, but the good news is all you got to do is pay us what you owe us. Then there won't be a foreclosure on your record. Just pay us the money and we won't break your thumbs. Just pay us the money and the penalties and interest and back payments and we'll be fine. Oh, you didn't tell? Okay, well, now that you may say it that way, I'll just take this $800,000 out of my back pocket and just give it to you. Defeasance. Then the periods of time, equity right of redemption is that time during which they can pay off everything they owe and avoid foreclosure. Then it goes to the courthouse steps. If it goes there without the borrower being able to pay it off, the time after that is the sale time. The property is bid on. The current buyer for the property has to wait for 10 days because there's a 10-day upset bid period during which anybody else can come along and make at least a minimum 5% or more better offer. And then that starts another 10-day upset bid period. And on and on and on until finally there's maybe some leveling off where, oh, it's only worth this much more, therefore I'm not interested in buying it at this point. So that 10-day, that's the statutory period that we're talking about here. Okay, we talked about short sales. Deed in lieu of foreclosure is friendly foreclosure. That's that thing where I'll give you the keys. Just don't put me through the foreclosure process. I acknowledge that things are tough, that I've not lived up to my end of the deal. Here's the keys, here's the deed. I'm walking. Please don't put me through foreclosure. The lender would have to allow that. You'd have to get permission from the lender to do it. They may not want to do it because they are forfeiting their ability to put a deficiency judgment on you if it's not going to be enough money to them. What are they getting back? A property from you that they can now sell as an REO, real estate owned. Is it worth enough for it to be worth them being happy with just getting the property? May not be. May not be worth enough. Might be a time in the market where the values are down and they're like, that's not going to do it. We're not happy with that. We need more in the form of a deficiency judgment. So therefore, we're not going to give you a deed in lieu of foreclosure because we want to be able to put this deficiency judgment on you. Hey. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's the fraud? So again, what's the fraud? I see your point. I'm also making a point. The point being, it's by caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. Sure, yes. If they know there's problems, they, the seller, because of the way the laws and rules are, they can still say, I'm not telling, no representation. Whether we like the system or not, it is the system. Now, here's the thing. The listing agent is probably going to learn about some of these problems with the previous offers that made them fall through. The listing agent's probably going to become aware that the last 3 deals fell through because the roof leaks. And now they have to disclose it. As long as they're properly disclosing it, there's still no fraud going on here. There's still nothing that would raise a red flag. What if they are? Recourse against what? Right? It's not against the law. It's not against the rules. They can put their house on the market. They can give a buyer free and fair opportunity to try to buy it, do the research, decide to back out for any reason or no reason. And here's what it all comes down to. And here's why I was being kind of a jerk a minute ago. Sorry. It was just for fun. I meant it all in love for the sake of the lesson. But the buyer has the right to do inspections and find out what's wrong with it. If the seller knows of a thing wrong, they can't try to cover it up, but they also don't have to talk about it. The broker does have to disclose it. And yes, they can put it out there, and maybe their goal is to never really sell it. If it sells, great. If it doesn't, they'll collect 5 due diligence checks in a row. But with each one of those checks, the buyer knew exactly what the deal was. The contract is written such that it is as is. That's what I'm getting around to. The standard offer to purchase 2T contract is worded that way. Every property is as is. You are never guaranteed that the seller is going to fix something. They're not making that promise with this contract, ever, unless they put a special addendum in there saying so, or amendment. So when somebody says, I'm going to buy it as is, I know every one of them is. Now, you can still, the buyer still has the right to have inspections and negotiate and say, would you fix the leaky roof? Would you fix the mold? And the seller still has the right to say no. But that is just the privilege of this strong, lopsided seller's market we're in, the privilege to the seller. It's not, doesn't seem fair. It just happens to be in their benefit. I don't know what there could be done, what could be done to make it more of a level playing field besides just more inventory so that the sellers aren't winning right quite so much, so that it's like buyers have more of a choice of other things. It's just the side notes, the ramification of a lopsided market. Now, side note, what if it were the opposite? What if, was it your daughter and son-in-law? What if they were buying in a buyer's market? Now the sellers are like begging, please, please pick mine. Please pick me. Pick me, choose me, Meredith Grey, right? Sorry that I know that. My wife watches it. I hate that scene. Anyway, please pick me. Well, okay, we'll pick you as a buyer, but there's so few of us buyers and there's so many of you sellers that we're going to insist that you come down by 20% off your asking price. We're not paying you $400. We'll pay you $350. Also, you're going to have to go ahead and sign up front that you're going to fix everything. Whatever we find, you're going to fix it. Also, you're going to pay $10,000 toward our closing cost. Oh, and we want a home warranty for $1,000. How's that fair to that seller, right? Now, if it's your daughter and son as a seller, is it like, that seems unfair that they have to suffer through these buyers that get to put their foot down and demand all well, it's just the product of the type of market. I get what you're saying, and I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm just making a point here. That's what's so frustrating. And that's what puts the extra hat on our heads as brokers of being a counselor. And it's tough. As a broker helping a buyer right now, you've got to get them rallied and you be a cheerleader and pick them up, dust them off and say, I know we lost the 4th one in a row I know you're running out of money because that's another $5,000, $10,000 due diligence check you lost. But let's keep going. If you want to keep going, we got to go through it. And sometimes they say, no, I'm done. I got to take a breath. I don't have unlimited funds. I got to go make some more money so I can have another due diligence check to try again. And what they've got to do is make stronger offers to win when they're winning. Maybe what they need to do if they're losing out because of repairs is either lower their bar and just to realize I'm going to have to fix more stuff than I would if it were a better market for me. Or don't buy it. Take longer to find the ones that don't need as much work. They probably are. Yeah, sure. They are. But there's nothing on the books with those parameters that you've outlined. There's nothing I hear in that says that they broke a rule or a law here. I get it. They're they are. Mm-hmm. They are. They have totally taken advantage. Yep. They sure are. You're welcome. Um, and I ask it in every CE class just to find out what other agents are running into. I'm hearing maybe it's cooling off now, but I've heard $50,000 of due diligence money, $100,000 of due diligence money. Basically, you're telling the seller you're not going to have to fix anything because I'm probably not walking away from 6 figures of due diligence money. But that is just the nature of the market we're in right now, and it is shifting. It's not quite as lopsided as it was. Sellers are taking a little longer. The days on the market are no longer in minutes. They're more in the double-digit days again, which is kind of heading in the stable, balanced direction. Don't know how long it's going to take before it's truly balanced again. Fair, equally as fair to buyers as sellers. But yeah, you make a good point. It is absolutely lopsided. They may not even care if they ever sell, and they're just banking due diligence monies. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. And people are doing that. Yeah, I've heard stories of people getting one due diligence check on one failed offer and just staying there and paying off their mortgage. Yeah. Yep. It always benefits somebody, one or the other. And then but what it comes back to is, what does that mean for us brokers? Just be a sharp, savvy enough broker that you can help your client get the thing that they need that benefits them. And it's not about you win, they lose. It's about, what do we care about? What do they care about? Maybe we can find something that allows for mostly both and compromise in a way that they get what they want for the most part and your people get what they want. But yeah, brings up a good point back to 9 and 10, chapters 9 and 10. There's no financing contingency. If you can't get the loan, you still lose your earnest money if it's after the due diligence period that you backed out because you couldn't get your loan. If you can't get your loan, if you don't get approved, you still lose the earnest money if you have to back out because of that, if you're backing out outside of the due diligence period. And then it's as is. Seller doesn't have to fix anything. Now, there is a local pretty big home inspector that started doing what he called, I think, pre-inspections. And he kind of got in a little hot water over it because some of his competitors didn't like him thinking outside of the box. And he found a loophole, but for a relatively small amount of money, he'll send one of his guys out with you when you go look at the house for the first time to help identify some red flag trouble spots. Maybe you don't want to make an offer against multiple offers in this competing market because the inspector is with you while you looked at it for that one time. It's not an official inspection. They're just saying, before you make an offer, you should know that you're going to probably have to deal with this thing over here and that thing over there. And if the seller won't fix this thing or that thing, here's how much it might cost you. Good thing to know before you put an offer together, or whether you even want to make an offer given that knowledge. Do you want to go in the crawl space? Probably not. Your client neither. So Nobody's going in the crawl space on their behalf. You aren't required to, unless you send somebody else under there. And that's a big unknown, big mystery point that I'm always nervous about when I love a crawl space house because you can get to the wiring, but I don't like a crawl space house because I don't know what's going on under there until my client is already invested with due diligence money in the transaction to the point where they can get an inspection done, which is another $400, $500, $600. It costs money to find out if you want to keep going or not. Obviously, cash sale or a new loan results in paying off the existing mortgage. You could either sell the house for cash, get the cash in hand, pay them off. Now you have no loan, no house, no loan. You could also refinance and get the money from the next lender and use that money to pay off your current lender, but now you owe the new person, the new bank, new lender. Couple more terms, something called buying the property subject to the existing mortgage. The buyer is making payments. The buyer is saying, let me buy the house and we'll just let me pretty much take over your house payments. I will just, you stop making payments, I'll start picking them up. I'll make payments on your loan, Mrs. Seller. The foreclosure deficiency is not that buyer's responsibility. It's trouble. It's kind of troublesome. It also could fire off the acceleration clause. If the lender finds out somebody else is in the mix and not making payments, it could become an issue. A loan assumption means that the buyer's making payments. They've assumed the loan. They're on the record as being the new borrower. It would need to be a qualified loan assumption usually. There are still, from the 80s maybe, some loans that are non-qualifying assumable loans where you don't have to qualify to assume it, but they're few and far between and maybe even almost non-existent. But now you can still assume someone's loan, but only with permission from the lender. They would want to make sure you're able to make the payments. In that case of a loan assumption, the foreclosure deficiency goes first to the buyer, and then the seller still has some secondary liability for it. And again, both of these things could result in that due on sale clause kicking in and requiring it to be paid off. Let's do a little recap here. Real property tax rate stated as 9 mils. 9 mils would convert into what decimal? How do we convert 9 mils into a decimal number? What do we divide 9 mils by to come up with the decimal version? Yeah, good job. What happens? What does it look like when we divide that by 1,000? Nine mils divided by 1,000. You can even move the decimal place over. It's going to be 2 zeros. Yeah, good job. 2 zeros, 0.009 looks like this. If you want to use the T formula, the circle formula, the 9 mils on top, divide it by 1,000, gives you 0.009. Mils is divided by 1,000. When it's the other kind of tax rate called dollars per hundred, that's easy. Per hundred divided by 100. That's the one you can use the percent sign for in the calculator. You can't use the percent sign in the mil type problem because there's no divide by 1,000 button on your calculator. It's not the percent button. That's divided by 100. Real property tax stated as 90 cents per 100 of assessed value would be what? Decimal multiplier. Now we've got dollars per 100. 90 cents per 100. What are we dividing 0.9 by? We divide 0.9, or we could put 0.9 in percent sign. It's going to look like this. 0.9 divided by 100, and there's our 0.009. Could also go 0.9 and the percent key, and there it is too. So it's the same thing. 9 mils is the same as 90 cents per 100. Dividing mills by 1,000, you're dividing dollars per 100 by 100. So it's D, 0.009. There's what the circle math looks like. It's really just moving the decimal point over, right? That's all you're really doing here. Up at top there, 9 mils, the phantom decimal point is after the 9. And we're moving it 3 places because there's 3 zeros in 1,000. 3 places to the left. 1, 2, 3, 0.009. And then the 0.9, the decimal's before the 9 because it's 90 cents per 100 on that bottom one. But we're only moving it over 2 zeros because there's 2 zeros in 100. So 2 spaces over is again 0.009. If none of that made any sense, ignore what I just said. Just do the system you're comfortable doing. Don't let me confuse you. You don't need to know every way to do something or every way to think about it. Pick the one that works and sounds best to you. Roll with it. The provision in an executory contract. Okay, stop. What are we talking about? What phase in the process are we in if it is an executory contract? What phase are we in? Are we listed? Are we under contract, or are we closed? Danita's got a good hint. Still stuff to do. We are under contract. An executory contract still got some stuff to do. You don't have your money yet because we're not at the closing table. We're not past that. So provision in an executory contract, the under contract period, that requires the performance of an action before the contract is executed, closed, is called what? Something that has to be done in order to close. This contract is blank upon the following thing happening. Yeah, you got it. It's contingent upon something happening. It might be contingent on the buyer's existing house getting sold so that they can get their proceeds, so that they can use those proceeds from that sale to buy the one that you're the listing agent of. Good job. A buyer and seller reach an oral agreement for the purchase of the seller's home. Buyer submits a written offer with the agreed upon terms. The seller dies before signing the written offer. Which of the following is true? Seller's estate must honor the written offer. The written offer is terminated because the seller didn't sign. Buyer and seller are under contract because they created an oral contract. Buyer's offer was terminated because no money has changed hands. Best answer out of these. Well, there's a written offer. Seller died before signing the written offer. Writing is what counts. The money does not matter and dictate whether it is under contract or not. The money, if it has been signed, accepted, and communicated, the money needs to go to the other party. But if the one writing the check chose to change their mind and keep the money, now you, the broker, would have to honor that. Give it back to them. Your buyer just handed you the due diligence check and you're walking to your car and your buyer says, no, wait, I changed my mind. And you're like, what? Give me back that check. But we're under contract. I've communicated it. You're going to have problems. The seller's going to be mad at you. They're going to maybe even take you to court to get this check because you were required to give it to them. I don't care. I'll deal with that later. You're not the enforcer. Give me the check now. You have to honor that. Give them the check. You're not the bodyguard. You're not the bouncer. You're just the person who follows their lawful instruction. And that is a lawful instruction. Yes, they might get sued by the seller, but that is not your problem officially. Now, kinda, because you're going to take you longer to make your money, but you've got to do what the client asks you to do. Okay, back on track here. As we kind of get into some math, some loan interest rate, loan to value type math. The value is the value of the property, obviously. What percent of the value of the property are you borrowing? That's what this is. Loan to value ratio is what percent of the value of the property is being borrowed. Loan to value, it's in the title, it's in the name, LTV. The loan is what you're borrowing, the value is the purchase price, the LTV is the percentage of that purchase price that's being borrowed. So if you put 20% of the value of the property down as a down payment, you're borrowing 80%. of the value of the property because you're putting 20% of your money in it. That means you need to borrow 80% of the value. You didn't have the full 100% of the value. Most people don't. Most people buy using a mortgage. So what is your loan to value ratio? What was your loan to value ratio when you bought your house? Maybe you put 5% down. What would be the LTV with a 5% down payment? 5% down. What would be the LTV, loan to value, on that? There you go. Basically, take that number of the down payment, subtract it from the number 100, and that is the LTV. Because 100% is the full percentage, full value of that sale price, right? If you put 5% down, then the LTV is what's left. You have a 95% LTV. That's what's being borrowed. That's your loan amount. We're going to throw all these terms around in the next few minutes. Loan amount, amount borrowed, LTV. And it all comes down to this. The difference between down payment versus loan amount. And they both add up to 100%, the number 100. Okay? So if your loan to value ratio is 95% and the sale price of the house is $100,000, what is the loan amount in dollars? We're just going to take that 100,000 and multiply it by that 95%. 100,000 times 95% sign, our loan amount is $95,000. That's it. That's LTV. Let's look at it in a circle formula. Purchase price of $250,000, a loan percentage of the purchase price, LTV of 80%. That converts to a decimal that you need to use for the calculation. If you don't have a percent sign on your calculator, you would need to use a 0.8 number. Again, because 80% is an understood decimal right here, and we're bumping it over 2 places. So that's the same thing as 0.8. 80% sign, 0.8. So we take 80% of that $250,000 purchase price, and that gives us the amount of the loan, the amount we're borrowing of $200,000. Okay, good. Another way you could see LTV written is as this /80/20 and 80/20 LTV. It all amounts to the same thing. We're just talking about percent. Just talking about the percentage of the value of the purchase price. So there it is, a circle formula. Let's put our value on the bottom, multiply it by the 80%, gives us the loan amount on top in dollars. Remember the guidelines for the circle formula. It's going to be a rate on the bottom on one side. Also on the bottom is the larger of the two numbers, and then the smaller of the two numbers is up top, probably. Unless that rate is like a 1 point something, but don't worry about that. Okay, now loan factor math. Don't fret about the loan factor. It's just another way of thinking about a thing. So let's look at your book. We've got it on page 337, a chart, the loan factor chart. This chart is assuming that we're talking about $1,000 being borrowed. If you're borrowing $1,000, look at the top line. $1,000 and your interest rate is 6%. Now let's go over and find the number of years the mortgage is for. A 30-year mortgage, see, 30-year term. This chart happens just to have 4 choices: a 15-year term, a 20, a 25, and a 30. 30 is by far the most common, most popular. A 6% rate. I wish this were not happening here because I don't want you to get confused and think it's always going to match. So don't even look at that one. Let's bump down to the next line. annual interest rate of 6.25 or 6.25. Ooh, my hand is messing up the folks. 6.25% for a 30-year term gives us a loan factor of 6.16. What does that mean? Well, this chart is written for $1,000 being borrowed. So what that means is if you get a loan from a lender where you agree to pay them 6.25% for 30 years, your payment of principal and interest every month is going to be $6.16 if you're borrowing $1,000. You with me? Because this whole chart is written in increments of 1,000. So don't worry about what house am I getting for 1,000. We'll deal with that part later. Second step. First step, though, understanding the relationship. Yeah, go ahead. 337. The relationship of the rate to the duration of the loan is what you're learning from this chart. So what if it were a 7% interest rate that you're getting on your loan and a 20-year loan? What factor would we use? What factor is appropriate on this chart or given on this chart for a 7% interest rate, 20-year loan? We're just moving our way across the line. Boom. 20-year column, 7% rate, 7.75 is the factor. Another way to look at it is our monthly payment of principal and interest, if we borrowed $1,000, would be $7.75. You with me? But you're not going to have a loan of $1,000 probably. You're not living in a house that you're only borrowing $1,000 to own. It's probably going to be, let's just say 100 of them. $100,000 loan amount. How many thousands, how many blocks of 1,000 are in $100,000? If you had a bag of $1,000, how many bags of $1,000 would there be in a $100,000 loan amount? 100. I said so in the name, right? It's 100,000. 100. That's the 1,000. So there's 100 thousands in 100,000. Therefore, if our loan factor was 7.75, we got that off the chart. We multiply that by the 100 because that's how many thousands there are. There's 100 thousands in the purchase price of 100,000. Our monthly payment is going to be $775. For what? What does that payment include? Principal and interest. How much of this payment is principal versus interest? We don't know. We haven't figured that part out yet. But we know the total of them together is $775 for the entire 20 years. Because remember, we did the 20-year loan column for this one. You with me? That's all loan factor math is. Looking at the chart or on the test problem in the class, they will tell you the factor. They'll say, using a loan factor of 6.32, calculate the monthly principal and interest on a $250,000 loan amount. Okay, slow down. What's he going so fast for? Okay. First of all, I picked 6.32 because that's the factor I just chose to say that they were giving us. But what that applies to is a 6.5% interest rate on a 30-year mortgage. So the loan factor in that situation, 6.5, is 6.32. Why is this a thing? Why are we even bothering with this? Because this is the old school method of giving somebody an idea of how much their payment is going to be. We still use it today. We use this loan factor chart, but it's deceiving because what it looks like today is this thing, a calculator. That's all a loan calculator is. That's all an algorithm on a bank website is when they say, we'll tell you your payment. They're plugging in that formula that we got from the chart, it's all put in there. You just plug in the numbers and it pops out the number. That's where it comes from, though. That's how the math works behind the scenes. So our loan factor on a 6.5% loan on a 30-year term, and I think I told you let's say a loan amount of $250,000. Okay, how many $1,000 bags of cash are in $250,000? 250 of them, right? That's pretty easy to grasp. But what's another way you could do that? Divide it by 1,000. So we take the loan amount for our borrower we're dealing with, whatever the borrower's loan amount's going to be, in this case, $250,000. Let's find out how many thousands are in it. 250,000, divide it by 1,000. There's 250 of them. We multiply that number by the factor that we got from the chart, and that's going to tell us our monthly principal and interest is $1,580. Pretty good, simple, straightforward rule of thumb. You could still do this. You could carry around a little card in your wallet that have these factors on it, and once upon a time we did that. We don't have to anymore. We just talk to the lender or plug it in. Yes, ma'am. Oh, they'll give them to you. You don't have to memorize the chart. Good question. No, the chart is just a reference, and they'll either give you the chart and you have to find it on the chart, but I doubt it. They'll probably just give you the loan factor, but I want you to understand where that came from. It came from a chart. And yeah. Yep. No, you don't have, thank goodness you don't have to memorize the chart. That'd be ridiculous. I wouldn't surprise me but they don't, and they won't. So don't worry about that. In the test problem, they'll probably say with a loan factor of 4.75 and a mortgage amount of $315,000, what is their monthly principal and interest? Okay, so let's make it not quite so simple. Let's say the loan factor, I'm just going to give it to you, with a loan factor of 6.99. Don't even worry about what interest rate and duration that applies to for your purposes. All you need to figure out is what is the monthly principal and interest. Okay, the sale price of a property is $437,000, and the loan to value ratio is 90%. Oh, he threw something extra in there. I hate when he does that. Can we get the answer with this information? Do we have enough? Yeah, we have enough. It'd help if I were able to write legibly. Let me make that a little better. Sale price, $437,000. Loan to value ratio, what you're borrowing, the loan amount, 90% of that. Okay, $437,000 times 90% means the loan amount is $393,300. Oh, now it's not quite as easy to just use our mental math to figure out the number we need to multiply. Okay, now it's going to be helpful to divide that number by 1,000. Okay, so 393.3. Why are we dividing it by 1,000? Because the chart is given in increments of 1,000. And if we're going to use a factor out of that chart, we need to use a number that is in the increments of 1,000. There are 393.3 bags of $1,000, right? And we're going to multiply that. Let me do it this way so that we can conveniently make it look good in the circle formula. I'm going to multiply that by the factor that is given in the problem of 6.99. Bunch of weird, odd numbers here. Now we're thankful for the little three-step system to solve this thing. 393.3 times 6.99 gives us a monthly principal and interest payment of $27.49 and 17 cents. Right? Not bad. Make sense? That is it. That's a loan factor problem. Let's look at it here. We're putting the loan amount divided by 1,000. That's one of the things that goes on the bottom of the circle math. And then the factor itself is the other thing. Multiply them together to get the monthly principal and interest. Again, this particular problem at this point does not tell us how much of that $956 is going toward the principal and how much of it is the interest. But we'll get to that. This is how much per month you would have to pay. Every month, it doesn't change. They're going to pay $956 a month for the entire duration of their loan, and it will eventually result in the loan being paid off, reduced down to zero. Interest payments. Now, when we do this, what we're concerned about anytime we're calculating interest is what is the balance right now. We won't necessarily care about what the original loan balance was, the original LTV. If they want to know what their interest payment, what proportion of their payment is interest today, well, how much is your loan balance today? That is what the payment is going to be based on. Hang in there. Based on the current loan balance, not the original one back when you bought it. So the amount of interest that you pay in dollars in 1 year is your annual interest. Groundbreaking. I'm sure you're mesmerized by my brilliant statement. Annual interest in dollars is what is there on the top. The amount of the current loan right now is one of the things on the bottom. That's the balance due. And then the interest rate on which you're paying. What'd they give you? Oh, they gave you 4%. Here's what it looks like. How do we calculate the amount of interest that you pay in a year? We're doing it by calculating simple interest. Don't worry about compound interest if you're familiar with that term. So it's just simply the loan balance today, right now, times the interest rate that you have multiplied together. When you multiply $200,000 by 4%, it gives you $8,000. That means in 1 year, how much interest are you paying? $8,000. In 1 year, you paid your lender $8,000 for the privilege of borrowing the $200,000. Right? Your annual interest is $8,000. If you know that you're paying $8,000 per year, can you tell me how much you're paying per month? What are you paying per month? If you're paying $8,000 in interest per year, how much of your monthly payment based on this loan amount is going toward interest? How are we going to do that? Convert yearly interest into monthly interest. Well, how do you convert yearly taxes into monthly taxes? Same thing, right? Divide by 12. Simple, right? Take that $8,000 annual interest that we know you're having to pay based on a loan balance of $200,000, divide it by 12. So in that month's payment, $667 of the payment was going toward interest. How much was the payment total for P&I? Remember, it was $956. So out of your total payment of $956 for principal and interest, subtract out the portion of it that is only principal, $667. And so with that one payment of $956, out of that payment, you paid your principal loan amount that you owed down by $289. See the proportion? Obviously, we're in the earlier stages of the loan because more of it is going to interest than to principal. We okay? All right. Here's what the circle looks like. Annual interest. Now, here's what's happening. We just calculated all of that based on a $200,000 loan amount. But we also just discovered that we paid down that loan amount by $289. So on month 2, we're not having to calculate interest on $200,000 anymore because we don't owe that anymore. We only owe $199,711 there on the right. Whatever $200,000 minus $289 is. So for calculating the amount of interest in your payment, how much is going toward interest on your payment in month 2? This is how we do it. We do it the same way we just did it, except instead of $200,000, we're going to use the new loan amount, the new lower one. It's lower by $289. So it's only same steps, but now we're going to say $199,711 times the interest rate of 4%, annual interest amount of $79.88. And then what was the next step? So how much is annual $79.88 per month? Divided by 12. Hang in there. If you're like overwhelmed, it's the first time we're doing it, so it's normal. It'll make more sense the more we do it. We take that $79.88 and then we'll take our break. Divide by 12, that means this second month's payment of $956, out of that $956 payment, $665 of it is going toward interest. A little bit less. How much was the other one? It was $667 on the first month's payment. $667 of the first month's payment was going toward interest. This time around, it is $665. Congratulations, $2. You're getting there. Just hang in. Now we take the total amount, which never changes. The $956 per month is always $956. Fixed rate, fully amortized, principal and interest payment, $956. Subtract the amount of interest of that payment of $665 in the second month. That means our principal is going down by $291 this time. Now, what's our new loan amount? The last one, $199,711 minus this one, $291. Our current loan balance after making 2 payments 2 months in a row is $199,429. You might have to do this. I doubt they will ask you for 3 months. The way they would word this problem is, what is your loan balance after the first month's payment? Or what is your loan balance after the second month's payment? We just did one that's basically after the second month's payment, where we do it one time, we then readjust and use the new loan amount and do the same stuff, but with the lower loan amount, and we end up with your loan balance after the second month. That's probably what they would ask. I doubt they would make you do this a third or a fourth time. They have other things to test you on. But it may very well be that they say, what is the loan balance after the second month? And we do exactly what we just did to find that out. Loan balance that was originally $200,000 when they bought it, lowered after the second month all the way down to $199,429. Right? Okay, let's have a break. 10 minutes. 10-minute break. I'll see you in 10. Hey. Sure. Mm-hmm. Uh-oh. Oh, man. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Okay. I am. Yeah. Right. I think I still owe you maybe one or two, but I am posting them all. I'll get them all up. So I'll have it there for you. Okay. Right. Well, and that time counts against you. Car time is not allowed. Therefore, it would just be, you can't miss. Right. You'd have to that could mess you up if it were a whole bunch of car time, right? Because it can't count for you. But I doubt you're good on time already. So yeah, yeah, sure, right, yeah, no, yeah, yeah. I get it. Well, I hope it all works out nice and smooth, fast recovery. Mhm. Yeah, she's got to stay still. Yeah, right, right. Mhm. That's right. Yeah. Thank you. You're welcome. We'll do. Sure thing. What's her name? What's her name? McKenna. Pretty. We'll do it. You're welcome. Okay. And welcome back. Here we are, math extravaganza. Okay. Am I unmuted? I think so. All right. The next one to do is a little simpler. The one we just did, we kind of just shocked your system there because it's one of the more, I guess, multiple stage types of problems. And we will revisit it. But let me show you a couple more that are a little simpler, and then we'll come back around to this one again. Let's make sure everything's good. Yeah, okay. So another calculation you might need to do is called origination fee. When you get a loan, that lender is excited because they're going to make interest off of you. But in order to even make the loan to start with and give it to you, they're going to charge you some fees. One of those fees is the, hey, let's do this fee, the origination fee. The first thing, it's a very common way that lender makes upfront money. An origination fee is exactly that, just a fee, just a cost of doing business. It's, by the way, anytime we're calculating fees that the lender's charging, they are based on the loan amount. If they're based on something, a lender fee is going to be based on the loan amount, not on the purchase price. You with me? So if you have a purchase price of $900,000, but you're only borrowing $100,000, your lender fees are going to be based on the $100,000, right? Good news. So feel free to go buy $1 million properties and only borrow $100,000 toward them. The origination fee, the way you calculate it is calculate 1% of whatever the loan amount is. There's the circle math at the bottom. Loan amount on the bottom, 1% also on the bottom. It might be different. They might say, you know what, we're running a deal today. We're going to charge you a loan origination fee of 0.5%. Or we're going to charge you an origination fee of 2%. The lender decides what they want to charge you. They have to tell you how much they're charging you, but the way that you need to calculate it as a broker, as a licensee, or as a pre-licensee is whatever the percentage is that they say the loan origination fee costs, multiply it by the loan amount. In this case, the lender's going to charge 1% loan origination fee. So what is 1% of $200,000? The origination fee in dollars is going to be $2,000. Right? So what would a loan origination fee be if the lender's charging 1.5% origination fee on a loan amount that we don't know yet? Because what we do know is the sale price is $357,000 and the loan to value ratio is 80%. So what is the origination fee in dollars with this scenario? We take our 357, times it by 80%. That gives us our loan amount of 285.6. Multiply it by 1.5%. 42.84. There you go. That's how much it's going to cost. That's how much the lender's charging for an origination fee. One of several fees, by the way. It's just straight up fee. It's what they charge. It's one of the ways they make some money up front. And then they're also going to make money on your monthly payment over the course of the loan. What if, what if the interest rate is currently 7%? The rate is currently 7%. And when you calculate your payment based on a 7% rate, it's a payment you can't afford. Let's say your payment on a 7% rate is $2,100 a month, and that's just more than you can afford. What you can afford is $1,900 a month. So 21 is not going to work for your affordability, for your budget. In order to make a $1,900 payment work, we need to lower this 7% rate. I'm not sure by how much, but it can't be 7. What if you could get the interest rate down to, let's say, 6.5%? Well, that's going to affect the payment and give you that lower monthly payment you need to afford it. But the house is still worth what it's worth, and you still have what you have for a down payment. The only thing you can do anything about and lower is the interest rate, because good news, your grandparents gave you a gift. They gave you $6,000. And with that, some of that money, or maybe all of that money, you can go ahead and pay the lender up front at closing an amount of money called discount points. You're paying the lender discount points at closing in exchange for them letting you only pay your mortgage based on 6.5 instead of 7. That's what discount points are. They're not in every transaction. They're not in every single loan because you may not need them. You may be okay with a 7% rate and the payment that creates. You might have been okay with that $2,100. But if you're not and you need a lower payment, then you need a lower rate to accomplish that lower payment. If everything else stays the same, price, down payment, therefore loan amount being borrowed. So the only thing you can manipulate is the rate. And thankfully, you've got some money to work with to go ahead and give that lender discount points. What's another word for discount points? Write this one down in your notes. When you see discount points, think prepaid interest. Discount points is the same as prepaid interest. Instead of making them wait, they're also still going to make that interest with every payment over the years, but you're giving them a chunk of money up front in order to let them make them agree to accept a lower interest rate from you for all those payments to come. As long as you give them a chunk of money to buy that rate down by buying discount points, you're paying them prepaid interest. Also, another word for both of these things is yield. Write that one down too. Lender yield. In other words, the lender is yielding it. The lender's making it. We're giving it to them. They're making this money. So you might see the test problem refer to it as lender yield. When you're paying them discount points so that they let you have a lower rate, you're buying your rate down, you are giving them upfront prepaid interest, which is resulting in a higher yield in their pocket, right? They're making more money up front. Here's what it looks like. It's prepaid interest. Now, this is a hard and fast rule that we were going to rely on, at least in this class. How much does it cost to lower the interest rate? We'll worry about how much we're lowering the rate later. But how much does one discount point cost? It costs 1% of the loan amount. It depends, in other words. It depends on how much you're borrowing. The dollars that it costs depends on how many dollars you're borrowing. So if the test question is the seller has decided to pay one discount point toward the buyer because maybe the seller's feeling nice. Maybe it's a different market than we're in and it's a buyer's market and the seller's trying to entice that buyer to pick them. Maybe that's an incentive we advertise with when we're listing it. Seller says, what can we do to beat out all these other sellers? Because there's so many competition, so many competing sellers right now. I could say, well, you could offer to pay down their rate because the rates are so high right now. Maybe some buyers can't afford the rates where we're at. The seller says, oh, that's a good idea. Tell them I'll pay 1% or pay 1 discount point with an acceptable offer. Okay, then how much is it going to cost you in cash, Mr. Seller? Well, my house is $300,000, and let's just say worst case scenario, they don't put any money down. It's a 100% LTV. They're borrowing the whole thing. That seller might want to know the worst case scenario. What's the most I could possibly have to pay for this discount point? Well, if the loan amount is $300,000, what's 1% of $300,000? That seller, in this case, would be saying to the buyer, I'll give you $3,000 that you can use to buy your interest rate down. You need a lower rate because the rates are so high right now. If you buy my house, I'll help you get a lower rate because I'll give you $3,000 to buy a discount point with. You with me as far as the concept? Now, the next question is, yeah, but how much does it lower the rate? By the way, 1 discount point does not lower the rate from 7 down to 6. It does not do that. The discount point costs 1% of the loan amount. But what does it do to the actual rate? It lowers it by 1/8%. So if the rate is currently 7% and the buyer can afford to buy this house if it were only 6 7/8%, then 1 discount point will do it. That $3,000 that it costs to have a discount point is going to buy the rate down. In other words, the buyers, all their mortgage payments can be based on 6 7/8 instead of 7. So 1 discount point lowers the rate by 1/8% of the interest rate, right? So the problem might look like this. The buyer this time has some extra cash. They've got the cash they need for the down payment, but they also have more available. So the buyer wants to buy their own rate down. Anybody can buy the rate down. An agent could choose to do it for their client. I mean, would I give my client $3,000 to buy the rate down? If I'm making 18 or 20 or 30,000, you bet. That gets the deal done. I'm okay with 17,000 in my pocket. I'll give somebody $3,000 if it puts 17,000 in my pocket. Maybe, probably, maybe. It's not out of the question. A seller could pay a discount point. A grandpa could pay a discount point. You could pay your own discount point if you're the buyer. The builder, oftentimes in a market where there's more buyers than there is inventory. I know there's more inventory than there are buyers. Sorry, the opposite of where we're at. A buyer's market. Builders are desperate. They're begging, please pick ours. Please pick our product. Buy our house. We'll pay 2% or we'll pay 2 discount points. So let's make this a builder. Builder is paying or buying 2 discount points for the buyer. And I'll make it simple for you. The loan amount is $813,000. How much are those 2 discount points going to cost in dollars? 2 discount points on a loan amount of $813,000. How much are they going to cost in dollars? First of all, how much does 1 discount point cost? Cost 1% of the loan amount. So 2 discount points is going to cost 2% of the loan amount. That's pretty easy math. So we need to calculate whatever 2% of 813,000 is. So those 2 discount points are going to cost that builder $16,260. Right? Key points here. Make sure that you're basing it on the loan amount, not the sale price. It's easy to mix that up. Make sure that anytime you're calculating lender fees, lender related things, it's always based on the loan amount, because that's what they have in the game. That's their skin in the game. They don't care about the purchase price when calculating their fees. They're going to charge people based on what the person's borrowing. And however many discount points there are is what percent of the loan amount it is. Pretty straightforward math. Now, if the problem is saying this, the interest rate is currently 6.5%. The borrower needs it to be 6.25%. We need to lower it. How many discount points will it take to lower the rate from 6.5 down to 6.25? Well, we know that one discount point, if we pay one discount point, it lowers the rate by 1/8%. So how many 1/8 are between these two numbers? Well, what is 6.5 minus 6.25? It's 1/4, isn't it? And how many 8s are in 1/4? Oh my gosh, I thought I was done with cooking with quarter cups and 1/8 cups. 2 1/8s are in 1/4. Therefore, we need 2 discount points to buy that rate down. Another way you could look at it is like this. Interest rate reduces by 1/8 with every point. 1/8 goes to 2/8, to 3/8, to 4/8. You don't really call it 2/8, you call it 1/4, right? Because you reduce it down to the lowest common denominator. Remember that from high school? But for the purposes of counting up discount points, think of it like 2/8 and 4/8 and all that stuff. Numbers of 8s, because 1/8 requires or costs 1 discount point. So they could ask you on the test, how many points will it take to lower the rate from 6.5 to 6.25? Okay, well, how many 1/8s are between 6.5 and 6.25? And now that we know that there are 2, it's going to take 2 discount points. Then if the test question went further and said, okay, it's 2 discount points, the loan amount is $153,000. How much are those 2 discount points going to cost? $2 of $153. They're going to cost a total of $3,060. So you could see 2 different kind of calculation questions coming out of this particular topic. Important thing to remember here is, how much does a discount point cost? 1% of the loan amount. How much does it lower the rate by? Not 1%, only 1/8%. Right? So, $350,000 loan amount. The lender says the interest rate is 4.5%, but the borrower needs it to come down by 0.25%, down to 4.25. Well, 4.5 minus 4.25 is a 0.25 interest rate reduction. 0.25 times 8, because there's 8 points in 1%. Take that interest rate, the amount it's being reduced, multiply it by 8, gives you how many points you need. You could think about it in this way or what I just did. Pick one, go with it. Don't try to understand it every way to do everything. Whichever way clicks in your brain the best is the one you should just rely on. The good news is, once you get past this test and you're out in the real world, you don't really need to do this, nor should you so much. You're going to pretty much refer lender-related questions to the lender. You're going to partner up with a couple of good lenders that have taken good care of your clients. they're going to be your go-to for knowledge in the world of lending. Because how can you stay on top of the mortgage market while you're still trying to learn and stay on top of the real estate market? It's unreasonable. It's like, you want to know tax advice? Here's a tax advisor, not me. You want to know legal advice? Talk to an attorney. I've got a good one for you. You want to know what your loan should be? Got a great lender for you. Oh, you want a different lender? I've got like 5 to pick from. Which one? Here they all are. You pick. Because they've all passed my test of taking good care of my clients without upselling them, without being a jerk, good communication skills. You're going to be the gatekeeper, the hub of all the vendors that you run across. Weed out the bad ones. Your clients can at least know that, well, she referred this one, so they're probably pretty good. I would also, if you ever put this in writing and refer to someone, make a little disclaimer at the bottom of the email. I'm not guaranteeing their expertise, just telling you based on my past experience, they've taken good care of my clients. You might want to talk to your BIC, see what they require. And by the way, side note, not in the curriculum, I would not, nor do I, make a website page on my site that says, here are all my recommended vendors. Because then what purpose do they have to call you? Right? I would make them call you. You want to talk to people on a regular basis. You don't want them to just, don't give them the store. Don't give them the keys to the store. You are valuable. Plus, maybe one of those people on your list, you lost track of the list and realized, oh, that guy went completely crazy and he's not on my list anymore. And I forgot to change it. So you prefer a bad person to him. Anyway, make them come to you for expertise and referrals and recommendations of good vendors. Okay. Discount points, origination fee. Now, let's take what we've learned and apply it to the total mortgage payment. Remember, the total payment that most lenders require you to pay includes taxes and insurance. They would rather handle that for you. You still have to pay it, but they want to send it in because they want to make sure it gets paid. They want to make sure that insurance coverage is maintained. They want to make sure the tax bill is kept currently paid. Therefore, taxing authority can't put a lien on the property that is above their lien as a mortgage lender. So the PITI is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. We've already learned how to discover and calculate the P and the I, principal and interest. We use the loan factor chart. And that chart is the foundation of any sort of loan calculator you might use. Either a physical calculator or something you do use online. And it's what your lender partners are using. They're just plugging it into the system and it pops it out based on that factor behind the scenes. So we know how to get the P and the I, but what about the taxes and insurance? They are also called escrow payment. When you're making a PITI payment to your lender, do they send in the tax bill every month? Do they say, oh, she sent me her $1,500 payment and $400 of that was for taxes. So let me go ahead and send that in to the government today, this month. And then next month you send them another $1,500 payment. It's another $400 out of that payment going to taxes. Do they send another $400 check to the government? No. The government doesn't want 12 paychecks from everybody. It would be crazy. They want the full tax bill once a year. Therefore, the lender has to keep all that money accumulating in an escrow account so that when it is due time to pay the bill, it's available, the entire amount in full at one time. That's what we mean by an escrow. Setting up the escrows means that we're setting up an escrow account with your money in it so the lender can use your money to pay your tax bill and your insurance bills when those times are due, come around to be paid. So the total mortgage payment of PITI is comprised of the loan amount and the escrow amount. What if your annual tax bill is $2,400 a year? How much would 1 month's portion of taxes be added to your payment? So your principal and interest payment here is, let's say, $1,000 for P&I. Calculated that using the loan factor. How much more would it be for the T, for the taxes, if the annual tax bill is $2,400? Simple math, right? The annual taxes that we know how to calculate, by the way, one of the first things we did. Annual taxes is $2,400. Just divide it by 12 because that's the annual. Need to divide it by 12. That gives us the monthly. So that $1,000 for P and I, we're going to add 200 to it. And now we have P and I and T. And now let's talk about the insurance. The I in PITI, let's just say the annual insurance premium is $850. Make some room here. Taxes we just learned are $200 a month. The insurance is $850 per year. And we're going to divide that by 12 also. So the tax portion is $784. Let's just say $70.84. And that is what your total payment adds up to. So your total payment is $1,270.84. Comprised of $1,000 for principal and interest that we calculate using the loan factor. The taxes that we calculate using the tax rate and the tax value to get the annual taxes, and then divide that by 12 to get the monthly with me. And then the insurance, which is the easiest of all of them, yearly insurance divided by 12 to get how much it is per month. That is your monthly payment, PITI. That's what the lender's doing. That wasn't too hard. So why are we paying the lender so much? I'm just kidding. It's a little more involved than that. Some other math that you need to know how to do is to figure out, is that lender even going to give the borrower a loan to begin with? So, qualifying ratios. Oh boy. Do you think the lender cares that you have an $800 car payment? You bet. Do you think they care that you have $500 of credit card bills that you pay every month? Like your recurring credit card payment, $500, $400, $600, you just can't stop shopping. Your credit card keeps being in the hundreds. So let's look at it. We've got an $800 car payment. By the way, when I was relatively new, an agent who was really starting to hit her stride, she was like selling a lot. She wanted some company. So I went with her to the Mercedes dealership to shop for her first like nice car. And the payment was going to be $800 a month. I'm like, I don't know. Even if I could, would I? I don't know. Maybe not. Depends on the car. Not for the one that she picked. I know that much. $800 car payment, $500 for credit cards every month. Student loans, oh no. We forgot about those. Student loans, let's say you're making a $200 a month payment for student loans just to be fun. What about lattes? What about your Starbucks bill every month? Not included, unless it's part of your credit card, but we're leaving that alone. We're talking about recurring monthly debt. Could be medical, some negotiated medical bill that's like coming at you every month. So it's recurring monthly debt, credit cards, car payments, student loans, medical bills. Let's say that's it. $1,500 is what your monthly outgo is. And you don't even own a house. You're still living with your parents. You're trying to think, do I want to buy a house? Can I afford to buy a house? Well, my monthly bills are $1,500. Can you buy a house? We don't have enough information, do we? How much are you making? Oh, I'm making $3,000 a month. I'm making $3,000 a month. I'm paying $1,500 of that because of my car and my credit cards and my student loans. So that's $3,000 is what I'm bringing in, gross income. $1,500 is what I'm sending out because of my own purchasing choices. $1,500 is what's left. Can I buy a house with $1,500 a month? Yeah, you can buy certain houses for $1,500. The question is Is your lender going to be okay with you buying a house where the payment is half of your monthly income? Yeah, that's a big fat no. Lender's not happy with 50%. The odds of you defaulting are probably greater in their little magical tables that they use to determine the likelihood of your success in keeping your mortgage payment current. 50% is not going to do it. That's all this stuff is, this buyer qualification. If 50 doesn't do it, do you know what does? Let's say it's for a conventional loan, those of you who've read ahead. What's a conventional loan back end ratio? What percentage of your gross monthly income is the lender comfortable with you paying for your house payment plus all your recurring debt? For a conventional, the numbers are 2836, meaning your house payment alone, just the PITI, should not exceed 28% of your gross monthly income. But that's not real life, because you don't only have the bills of your house, probably, unless you're a Dave Ramsey fan and you've successfully completed his course. Good luck. You also have these other things we just talked about. You've got this stuff. So the combination of your house payment to be that you're hoping to get, plus all of your personal choices of outgo, that extra $1,500 plus whatever your PITI is going to be, cannot exceed 36% of your gross monthly income. That's what the lender's looking at to determine if you qualify to borrow money from them. And this is for a conventional loan. What if this won't work for you? What if all these ratios are just too low? Your house payment plus your recurring debt is going to exceed 36% of your monthly income. Then you're going to have to look at another loan option. These are the numbers for a conventional loan. You're going to need to look into probably an FHA loan or some other loan that allows for higher percentages of your monthly income being put toward house payment and recurring debt. Because an FHA loan, by the way, is usually around that 42% range. They'll let your monthly payment plus recurring debts add up to as much as 42% of your gross monthly income. And I had a little lady who was in her retirement years, and her retirement income added all up. She wanted to buy a new house. She wanted to buy brand new construction. So it was at a certain price point that wasn't going to budge, because we're in a market where they don't have to budge. It was like close to $300,000 she was trying to buy for this little not studio, but like a little ranch retirement type house. And between what she made per month and what her payment was going to be and her other expenses, because she had a car payment, a relatively new car, a couple of years old, I think her car payment was like $600. We were up to like 44%. Her future house payment on the house she wanted to buy, plus her car payment, and that was about it. I don't even think she had credit cards, was just over the allowable qualifying ratio for an FHA loan. And so we had to shop around for a while. She even considered selling that car and going down to a cheaper car payment, go from $600 car payment down to, but the problem was, how much lower does the car payment need to be to affect this ratio enough to get it below the 43% cap? It was going to be like, it needed to be $100 car payment. And it probably wasn't even worth having a car at that level that for her to depend upon. And that was a tough choice, because I didn't want this retiree lady not able to get around. Why you want to have to worry about your doctor appointment and taking an Uber to get there in time, right? Long story short, we found a credit union. They can be really good deals. We found a lender for her that would allow her to be a little higher than the standard. So the lesson here is keep looking. If the lender isn't willing to qualify your person, maybe another lender is. Maybe there's an extenuating circumstance, something that would give them a loophole to go through. So she, I think, was able to get a loan on a 44% loan to value ratio. Anyway, that's kind of how it works in the real world. Here's how it looks for your purposes. The PI and TI cannot exceed on a conventional loan 28% of your gross monthly income. So what is your gross monthly income? If you make $9,000 a month, what is 28% of that? If you're making $9,000 a month, 28% of that is $2,520. Your monthly principal and interest payment cannot exceed $2,520 if your gross monthly income is $9,000. Well, what if I make $10,000? Well, if you make $10,000 a month, 28% means that the lender will allow your house payment to be $2,800. That might be a real world scenario. Should I take the job that's not as fun but gives me more money, gives me $10,000 a month instead of $9,000? Well, I want to buy this house that costs $2,800 a month, principal and interest, taxes, insurance, and basically squeeze another almost $300 out of my budget. Then I'm going to need to make another $1,000 a month. Maybe it's a two-spouse situation. One spouse is at home. Can that spouse who's at home somehow find something to do to bring in another $1,000? And now we are able to afford almost $300 more a month in a house payment. Those are the acrobatics that you're going to be dealing with and talking to them, helping them work through. So the front end ratio is just the principal and interest, taxes, and insurance, just the house payment, basically. Front end ratio needs to be at least no more than 28% of the gross monthly income. The back end ratio is probably what matters more because that's real life, because you probably have more than just a house payment. You probably have credit cards and all that other stuff. So all of that combined plus the house payment to be cannot exceed 36%. Those are the qualifying ratios for a conventional loan that you need to know. Write it in your notes. 28, 36 are the qualifying ratios for a conventional mortgage. They might vary in the real world. There might be a lender offering a conventional loan that will allow a little bit different ratios, maybe as a promotion, but for your purposes of passing this test, 28, 36. So if the test question says, what is the minimum monthly income needed for this borrower to afford the thing? If our principal, interest, taxes, and insurance are $1,500 for those, house payment, and another $700 a month for recurring expenses, the total monthly outgo in the budget is $2,200. Then $2,200 divided by the back end ratio number gives you how much they need to make. $2,200 divided by 36% tells us that they would need to make $6,111 a month gross income to afford this house while still paying $700 a month in expenses. What if out of those $700 of expenses, $500 is to a car? And you tell them this news and they're like, well, gosh, I don't make $6,111 a month. I only make $6,000 a month. Do you need that car? I know you might want it. Can you go back to riding the bike? Can you go back to a smaller car payment? Is what we're talking about. Do you want to, your grandpa will give you his old Buick for free? You don't want to give up the Lexus? You want to keep driving that and look cool on Instagram? Okay. Did you want the house or no? Right. Maybe don't put the car on Instagram, put the new house on Instagram, and then you can have the house that might actually make you some money. Anyway, some of these things you don't say, you just think. So in this problem, they would need, if all they needed to pay out was the house payment of $1,500, then all they would need as a gross monthly income is $5,357. But that $700 extra that they have to pay means that now their income needs to be $6,111. See how that goes? So the minimum needed will be the bigger of the two numbers. What is the monthly minimum needed? $6,111. They need the bigger because they need to be able to pay for not only the house, but the expenses too. Okay, let's start digging into this one. Hope you're sitting down because you might get a little faint, but it's not bad. It's just an accumulation of all the things we've already looked at. Don't worry about this. By the way, if you see a problem like this on the test and math is not your best friend, hit the skip button, come back to it later. Don't just be so determined to beat this thing that you spend 20 minutes disproportionately trying to figure out this thing and conquer this mountain where you could have answered like 5 or 6 other questions and gotten that many more points. Come back to it. If this is easy for you, knock it out. But if it's scary, intimidating, and also maybe it's going to make your brain more tired. Apparently mine's tireder. Skip it and come back to it, right? Use some strategy. Okay. Buyer's buying a property for $425,000. To buy it, they're going to use a conventional loan with a loan ratio of 90-10. All that means is how much are they borrowing? The LTV is 90%, right? The interest rate is 4.5% on a 30-year loan. The lender is charging an origination fee of 1% and also charging 3 discount points because clearly that buyer needs their rate to come down, right? The municipality in which the property is located taxes properties at 14 mills and a tax value of 75% of market. You see, this is like 6 problems that we've done individually. The commission payable is 5.5%. Attorney fees and miscellaneous expenses are $4,000. Given the above information, provide solutions to the following in dollars. If we needed to calculate the commission, don't worry about who's paying the commission. All they're asking you here is how much is the commission? All right, just because they're talking about the buyer here, if the answer the resulting question in the problem ends up being how much is the commission going to cost? Don't just fill in the blanks and say, well, 0 to the buyer. We didn't ask how much is it going to cost the buyer, even though they didn't even mention the seller. You with me? How much is the commission in this transaction? You need to know the rate of commission, and you need to know what? Loan amount? No, we don't base commission on loan amount. Heck no. We base commission on the biggest, fattest number in the transaction, the sale price, right? Sale price is $425. Commission is 5.5%. I get $23,375. Let's see if the problem gets that. Oh, look, there it is. 425 times 55. I'm sorry, 5.5%. It's $23,375. What about the second? What if instead of commission, it asks you for number 2? Tax value. What is the tax value based on all of this information? There's a lot of stuff here that you don't need in order to calculate tax value. So what do you need? You need, let's see, they give you the tax rate based on the percent or the assessed value. So we're going to need the purchase price, the fact that it's a tax value of 75% of the purchase price, and we're going to need the mills. So we've got a purchase price of $425. We're going to calculate 75% of that to get our tax value or assessed value, whatever we want to call it. Tax value is $318. Sorry. $318,750. Now that we know our tax value and our rate, because they gave it to us in mills, 14 of them. What are we dividing mills by? 1,000. 14 mills divided by 1,000 gives us a decimal of this, 0.014. Multiply that by the 318. Oops. That gives us a tax bill of $4462.50. But the original question was not even that, was it? I went too far. Original question was, what is this? Tax value. All you had to do was take the value times the 75% of market number, $318,750, right there. And we know the next one too, because we just did that accidentally. Annual tax bill is $44,6250. But what if they ask for number 4, the loan amount? How much do we calculate that? We need the purchase price and we need the LTV. Purchase price is $425,000. What's the LTV? 90% of that. $382,500. So the loan amount is $382,500. What if they ask you the down payment though? What's the down payment with all of these numbers? I think somebody might already put that in there. That's the $425,000 minus the $382,500. If I can remember how to use my calculator. $42,500 is the down payment, because that's what 10% of the purchase price is. 10% because the loan to value is 90, and 90 plus 10 equals the full 100% of value, right? But they didn't ask for that. Oh, there's where all of my little math was. I just did all this stuff. Boom, 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 boom. Talkie. There it goes. Okay. So here's what it looks like for loan amount. Number 4 was just the purchase price times 90% for $382,500. Annual interest. Oh boy. Annual interest. All right. We'll do that when we come back from break. You can work on it now. I'll just leave this screen up and I'll see you back in 10 minutes. Or go take your break and we'll talk about it when you get back. Hey. Mm-hmm. No, it'll be longer. Well, the class exam or the PA. Say, are you asking if that'll be longer than the class exam or the PSI? Let me think. I need to look back and see how long the class exam is. It'll probably be longer than those. The PSI is 120 total questions, 80 on the national, 40 on the state. And they give you 2.5 hours on the national and 1.5 hours on the state if you need it. The class exam is not that long, although I think we might give you 3 hours to do that one. Yeah. You're welcome. So I'll leave that up and hey. Sure. Currently we don't have any on the schedule. I've taught them before. We just don't have any at the moment. And I'm not sure. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, and when we do, we typically hold them from like 5:30 to 9:30, something like that. But I can keep you posted. We're gonna have a new website rolling out at the end of the week. The one we have now still works. It's just real dated, but whatever we've got will be updated on the website. Same web address, ncacschool.com. Yeah. You're welcome. Sure thing. Welcome back. Here we are. We left off with annual interest. Annual interest, right? Is that the one? Yes. What do we need in order to calculate annual interest? What pieces of information? If it's interest, so it's a lender related thing, right? It's a loan related thing. Therefore, what matters, the purchase price or the loan amount? In this case, we're going to need the purchase price in order to get the loan amount, but what matters is the amount you're borrowing, right? So what are we borrowing? 90% of 425. 425 is the sale price. The LTV is 90% of that. $382,500 is being borrowed. That's the loan amount. Now, interest on that. What is the interest rate? It's a lot of stuff to weed through in this problem, isn't it? Got to dig on down through here. Oh, there it is. Interest rate is 4.5%. So we have a loan amount of $382,500. That's what's being borrowed. We're borrowing it at an interest rate of 4.25%. No, sorry, 4.5. 4.5%. And that's it. 382.5 at 4.5% means an annual interest in dollars of $17,212.50. That's how much we're paying in interest in 1 year if our loan amount is $382.5. Sorry, that's what I was trying to share with you. We took our loan amount, stuck it down here. We took our interest rate, multiplied it together. There's our $17,212.50. That's annual. What if I said, how much is the monthly interest? Going to divide that by 12, right? So monthly interest is $1,434,375. What if I said, how much is the principal and interest? Do we have a loan factor number here? I think we have one of those. Let me just give you one. What is the principal and interest payment if the loan factor is 6.99? Okay. What do we need in a factor math problem? Do we need the price or do we need the loan amount? Need that loan amount. How many 1,000s are in 382,500? Divided by 1,000. 382,500. There's 382.5 of them. Multiply that by the factor number. Tells us that, oops. Make some room here. Erase my chalkboard. The chalkboard, for those of you less than 50. Just kidding. 382.5 times 6.99. Is a monthly principal and interest of $26.73 68. Okay, next. That was not asked for. That was a freebie I threw at you. Total origination fee and discount points. They like to do this to you. They will make you do two calculations in one, and they'll say, what is the lender charging as a total of both origination fee and discount points together? So what do we need to know? Purchase price or loan amount? There it is. I saw lips moving. Loan amount. And what did we figure our loan amount was? It was $382,500. There's our $382,500. How much is the origination fee? They tell us it's 1%. So we need to calculate 1% for origination fee. I just wrote that right here. And then how many discount points? They're charging 3 of them. So 3 discount points means 3%. And they are of the same thing. They're both percentages of the loan amount. So what you could do is add them both together and just calculate 4% of the loan amount. Who likes that method? Right? Okay, $382,500 times 4%. The total together is $15,300. But that's if they ask them together. There it is. Number 6. That's the way they did it. $382,500 times 4%, $15,300. Okay. Now the big boy. Loan balance after the first payment. Ugh, why did he ask us this? Not my fault. It's in the slides. First thing we need to do is come up with a monthly principal and interest. And while we probably need to correct this a little bit and put the actual loan factor into the problem, which we didn't do, in the solution box here, we see that the loan factor is 5.07. So we're taking the loan amount of $382,500, going to divide it by 1,000, which we've already done. Boy, the writing is even worse today. And we're multiplying that by the factor that we just now gave you of 5.07. 382.5 times 5.07 as a factor means our monthly principal and interest is $1,939.28. Now we need to calculate monthly interest so we know what to subtract from the principal and interest, right? I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Monthly interest starts with annual interest. How do we get that? We did it already. Yep. Because number 5 was our annual interest calculation. We got the annual to be $17,212.50. And we're going to divide that by 12 to get the monthly. And that brings us $14,34.38 per month. We're going to subtract that. That's the interest that month. Who wants to be in the home loan business? Have a bunch of people paying you $1,400 a month. Let's try to work that out. That leaves the amount of money that's coming off of the principal. You're paying your principal down by $504. We'll round it up to 505 like they do in the problem here. There it is. 505 just for simplicity and space. 505 is coming off the principal. The question is the loan balance after the first payment, so we're almost done. Now we just need to subtract 505 from the loan amount that we were working with. So that means 382.5 minus 505 is the new loan balance after the first month's payment of $381,995. There it is legibly in the lower right. So it's like what? 4 steps. Calculate the principal and interest using the loan amount and the loan factor. Calculate the monthly interest using the loan amount, the interest rate to get the annual, divide by 12 to get the monthly. Subtract that monthly from the payment you just calculated to get the amount of principal by which it came down. And then subtract that principal from the original loan amount that you started with to get the new loan amount after this month. What if it went on to say, what's the loan balance after the second payment? Oh no, I was hoping he wouldn't ask that. Okay, so this one is $381,995. New loan balance we're working with, $381,995. What else do we need to do? Well, we need to calculate annual interest off of this number. What remains unchanged? P&I is going to stay the same, by the way. Monthly P&I is going to stay the same. That's the same payment fixed the whole time. $1,939.28 is what your P&I payment is. Now, new loan amount is $381,995. Let's use that to calculate, first of all, annual interest. What is it times, let me move some stuff around here. 5 times the 4.5% interest rate gives us an annual interest of $17,189.78. Turn that into monthly. It's $1,432.48. That's the monthly, and we're subtracting that from the house payment of $1,939.28. It's roughly 550, we'll call it 507. That's how much the principal is coming down. Oops, there it is. There's that math. Principal's coming down by $507 after the second month. We're going to subtract that by the loan amount we started with after the first month. And so it's approximately $381 and some change, $488, we'll call it, somewhere in there. That's the loan balance after the second month. I didn't bother to clear out the calculator from rounding. They won't give you two answer choices that are different enough or that are close enough that you'll be confused over a rounding issue. So don't worry about that. All right, here we go. Hang in there. Buyers discussing obtaining a loan with their preferred lender. During the qualification process, the buyer learns that to obtain a loan, they must have sufficient income to meet debt-to-income ratios of 28% PITI and 36% total expenses. 2836 conventional loan. Their current income is $15,000 per month. That's what they're making. What is the maximum amount the buyer could pay for a monthly PITI? Which ratio matters for just PITI? The front one, the 28. So what's 28% of their monthly income? $15,000 per month times 28%. The most they could pay for PITI payment, $4,200. What kind of shack can they buy at $4,200 a month? Just kidding. It's not a bad house, right? I'll take it. What's the maximum amount they could pay for total monthly expenses? Not just the PITI, but also the motorcycle and the car and the student debt and the credit cards and all that stuff. What's the maximum percentage of their monthly? They could be, or dollars. It'd be the 15,000 times the 36%, right? 5,400 total. And then how much total monthly recurring debt payments could the buyer have? Oh, how much is that recurring debt portion? of the back end ratio stuff? Well, it's the PITI of 4,200 taken away from the total 5,400. So the most recurring debt could be $1,200. But I have an $800 car payment and $400 in credit cards. Well, maybe Granny will pay off your credit cards for you. And now all you have is an $800 recurring debt payment. Now you have a little more buying power, right? $4,200 for the PITI, $5,400 for the total of both. Difference is 12. A buyer is qualifying for a new loan using debt-to-income ratios of 28:36. If they're going to have annual property taxes of $3,600, homeowners insurance of $1,200, their current monthly recurring debts are student loan, credit cards, car payment. If the buyer has $120,000 annual income, how much is left for principal and interest? Oh my gosh, what? Let's see if this makes sense. What we know is the taxes are $3,600 a year. Divide that by 12. That's $300 a month. So monthly taxes, $300 on the left. Insurance is $1,200 a year. That becomes $100 a month. There's the I, T and the I. Those add up to $400, by the way. Now, how much do the recurring debts add up to? Well, we've got student loan for $400, credit cards for $500, car payment for $350. What's that add up to? Is that 9? That's $1,250. Add all those together is $1,250 for recurring debt. And there is that mentioned in the middle of the slide there. We also need to subtract the recurring debt and the taxes and insurance. The things that are not highlighted are the things that are given. So that's $1,650 just between the recurring debt and the taxes and insurance. The annual income is $120,000. What is that per month? Divide 120,000 by 12 means we're making $10,000 a month gross. 28% of that means the maximum we can spend on a house payment is $2,800. By the way, are we? We got $1,950 plus $400. It's right in there. We're close. And then 36% is the back end ratio, the most we can spend on house and all the other stuff, $3,600. That back end ratio of 36, if we subtract the $1,250 for our recurring and the taxes and insurance of $400, means the most we can pay for principal and interest is $1,950. There's a lot of acrobatics here, isn't it? Isn't there? The buyer's maximum principal and interest is $1,950 and the current rate is 4.25%. What's the maximum loan amount? $1,950 is the P and the I. The interest rate is 4.25%. If we take that $1,950 and using a loan factor that they will provide you, divide it, that tells us maximum loan amount is $396,341. Work on that math between now and 2 days, yeah. And bring me questions because I'm sure you're going to have some. So do those problems in the back of the chapter. There might be some math problems you'll find on the practice tests that you can use, and Just bring me the questions you end up with. All right. How does this whole financial process work in the United States? Well, the Federal Reserve System is in place to do some various things. They are there to regulate how money works, how it flows. They control the interest rate depending on the economy. They will raise or lower the interest rate to help spur it and keep it healthy. Now, of course, there are opinions as to how well they're doing that, especially right about now. How quickly should they raise interest rates? Right away, big chunk all at once, or spread out? And we're kind of doing that nowadays. They've raised them a couple of times. They're about to raise them again. And that is the Federal Reserve. It's there to regulate how money flows. Another thing they do is to avoid the Great Depression. One of the problems that took place in the Great Depression era, 1920s and 30s era, was that banks started loaning out more money than they had in their vaults. They realized that, well, people aren't going to come get all their money at one time. We're going to have a certain amount at any given time. So let's start making loans to other people, not necessarily that can be backed up by the money that we have in hand, because odds are what could go wrong until it did. Till the Great Depression hit, people made a run on the bank. All of them came to the bank at once. Remember White Christmas? Is that what it is? Is that the one with what's his name? Now I can't think of him. My wife loves that movie. Where they made a run on the bank. Everybody wanted to pull their money out at the same time, and the banks didn't have all of their money. All of everyone's money. It's the first come, first serve. The first ones to get there, figure out there's a problem, and come and demand their money is the ones who got their money. Then the banks ran out. They shut and locked the doors, and things went pretty bad. Well, as a result of that, now the banks are required to have certain minimum amounts of reserve funds on hand. In order to be able to loan out more money, they've got to have the reserves to back it up, a certain level of them. They don't have to have 100% of them, but more than they did back then. So the Federal Reserve sets the reserve funds for banks to make sure their loans are backed up by actual value, by actual money. And the whole idea here is that they're creating a favorable economic climate for growth, right? And if there's things that happen on the global scale, maybe the Federal Reserve makes some choices that help correct for that, so the U.S. economic growth is healthy. They also control the interest rate at which people can borrow. The Federal Reserve System has 12 banks across the country. They loan money to the banks that you go to. So your bank, Bank of America, Wells, whatever it may be, they borrow money from the Federal Reserve at a lower rate than you can borrow money from Bank of America, and the difference is profit. Right? So they're borrowing money from them, and the rate at which they can borrow money affects the rate that you can borrow the money from your bank. So it's kind of a flow down kind of a thing. So the choices the Federal Reserve makes can greatly influence the economy. By the way, federal is just the name. It's not a government organization. You could call yourself Federal Real Estate Company, and people might assume that it's dealing with houses owned by the government, but it's just the name. It's kind of what we're dealing with here. Federal Reserve System made some choices in response to the 2008 stuff that happened to bring us the current way we do things now. And we'll talk more about that. The difference between the primary and the secondary mortgage market. The primary market is that point at which the borrower is borrowing from their lender. Those little one at a time home loans. They are packaged up in chunks of credit worthiness and sold on the secondary market to other institutions. So they're originating mortgage loans, starting the mortgage loans with the actual borrowers, lending money directly to consumers. That's the primary market. That's the market that we interact with as brokers, because our buyer borrowers are borrowing money. Where does it come from? Where does this money that they're borrowing come from? Commercial banks, insurance companies. When you pay your insurance bill and you grumble because it's so expensive, what are you getting for all that? And you haven't even had a fire. What's the point? Well, they have lots of cash on hand. So insurance companies are investors in the mortgage market. Money from insurance companies, endowment funds, mortgage banks. A bank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. If you go across to the right, you'll see another term called mortgage brokers. Mortgage brokers are a little different than mortgage banks, but they also invest in real estate. Investment groups, pension funds, credit unions, a pension fund like Firefighters Union pension fund or something, they might choose to invest in mortgages, use their money to invest in mortgages and get a return on that money. In our world, as brokers, we can refer people to a mortgage bank or a mortgage broker. We might tell them, go to your bank, go talk to your credit union, go talk to your bank you have a checking account with. Or we could say, let me give you a number of this other person. This is a mortgage broker. Think of a mortgage bank as going to a new construction community. What do you buy when you go there? Only that builder's product. That's all they have to sell you. But what do you buy when you go to a general practice real estate broker? Doesn't matter. They can help you with anything. That new construction one, but also that resale down the street, or a foreclosure, or a short sale, or whatever, even a for sale by owner. A broker has more choices than a banker. Mortgage banker is going to sell their own in-house lending products. A mortgage broker can pick from lots of different investors. Is there one better than another? Depends on what the terms of those loans are for your borrower. One might be a better product. But what I've found is that a mortgage broker can actually do, for instance, I'm just picking on them, but this may not be true right now, but they might be able to do, for instance, a Bank of America loan for cheaper to the borrower than a Bank of America on-site loan person could do it because of the way the money gets paid out. Mortgage people get paid on the front end when the transaction is done, but also on the back end when they sell the loan, so that money can be moved around, shifted around. They could make money in such a way that it's better to go with a mortgage broker, or cheaper, better terms and lower cost to your buyer when they go through a broker versus the bank themselves directly. So I always tell people, shop around. I can give you a couple names and numbers, talk to several, see what they offer, and I'll help you understand the disclosures, see what your good faith estimates are, help them understand the apples to apples comparison, which we'll learn more about in the next chapter. So all of that's the primary market. What loan type should they get? When we're packaging them up, not we, but banks, to sell to others, they're basically buying loans from the loan originator banks. The banks who originate the loans are putting them in big packages, selling them to others. And that is freeing up money to be loaned out to even more borrowers. So the reason for selling a big package of loans like that is to get more money in hand to loan out again and make interest on again. And the reason somebody would buy some is that they want the benefit of a long-term income of the interest payments over the next 30 years of mortgages, of all of those mortgages. There are three organizations we're going to study here that constitute the secondary mortgage market. One is called Fannie Mae. That's the short term. Federal National Mortgage Association. That's the big one. They buy conventional loans. They also buy FHA and VA loans. They buy them and they establish the market for selling them. It's like a marketplace. Another one that deals in government-related loans is called Ginnie Mae, Government National Mortgage Association. And then Freddie Mac is Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corp. It's for like savings and loans and other one-off kinds of loans. Fannie Mae is the biggest. Fannie Mae buys all three types we're going to study in this course: conventional, FHA, and VA. It's the largest marketplace. It's the oldest, been around forever. Assists with making policy because it's been around for so long. So government housing policies are based on stats obtained through Fannie Mae and what they have to say. They resell loans to help stabilize the mortgage market. They also figure out what guidelines those loan originators are going to use to decide to give the money out or not. So remember, there's an originator person, there's a processor that accumulates all the info and verifies it, and they hand off that nice finished product to the underwriter so they can make the final decision. The guidelines that underwriter is using to decide if they're going to loan you the money are established by Fannie Mae. What are those underwriting guidelines? How long of an employment duration? Were they in the same line of work for a certain number of years? How many pay stubs? How many tax returns? What guidelines are we going to use to make the lowest risk loan we possibly can to come as close to guaranteeing getting paid back, basically? So it's the marketplace for buying and selling loans. Fannie Mae likes A paper. Fannie Mae likes low risk, conventional loans. In fact, they don't do individual FHA and VA loans. The only reason they will use or interact with FHA and VA loans is because they've gone through this one first. They've gone through Ginnie Mae, and the government has said, we will stand behind these loans. Therefore, hey, Fannie Mae, buy and interact with them too, because we will stand behind them. If it weren't for that, Fannie Mae wouldn't touch FHA and VA loans. Those are government related. The government steps in and says, we will either insure or guarantee these loans. Therefore, you're safe, Fannie Mae, to buy and sell them within your marketplace. So, Ginnie Mae is the government agency under Housing and Urban Development. Those FHA and VA loans are considered higher risk loans for a couple of reasons. Number one, FHA loans are attractive to borrowers either because they have less money for a down payment or they have a lower credit score or maybe a little bit of both. So therefore, if they have lower down payment in the house and life goes sideways for them, are they a little more likely to default on making their payment? If they only stand to lose like a couple $1,000s of their equity, probably, right? So an FHA loan, as we'll see in a moment, only requires you can get into an FHA loan for as little as 3.5% down payment. $3,500 down payment on a $100,000 house, and you could have an FHA loan. Now, compare that to someone else who uses a conventional loan and chooses to put $20,000 down on that same $100,000 house. You've got one borrower who's putting $3,500 down. You've got another borrower who's putting $20,000 down. And if life goes tough because maybe some global worldwide bug that starts spreading and job losses and economic this and that and the other, and some people have to make a decision to buy groceries and keep the lights on and maybe live with mom and dad instead of keeping up their house payment, which one of these buyers is probably more likely to go? The one that only stands to walk away from this much money instead of this much money. Therefore, higher risk. The lower down payment, higher loan to value ratio borrowers are the ones that are considered high risk. And so Ginnie Mae, this government agency, works with Fannie Mae to say, hey, we will help you alleviate some of that risk. Ginnie Mae also allows investors who are providing the money to purchase shares in pools of loans, and they will pay directly to the investor. So think government. Freddie Mac, they pool loans together. They sell bonds. They interact with conventional loans. They also deal with mortgage banks and also savings and loans. So it's a marketplace for those types of loans. So it's those three, but Fannie Mae is the biggest. In 2008, in October, right about this time of year, I had 4 closings scheduled to happen. I was pretty happy with that. But within 1 week's time, all 4 of those closings fell apart. and I ended up with 0 closings in the month of October. And I worked for a certain big firm that pays a lot of commission split, but also charges a big desk fee. And I had to pay them $1,100 a month just to walk through the doors, no matter what I sold or didn't sell. All of a sudden, that $1,100 felt pretty heavy once I went to 0 income that month. That happened to be when I looked around for the first time and realized, oh, something's happening in the market. What is this? Welcome to 2008. It had been leading up to it, because for my first 12 years in the business, in retrospect, I didn't appreciate how good it actually was. I had no point of reference. Rates were around 6%, which at the time had just been coming down to that, so that was better. Now people complain about 6 because we went up to it because we were lower, but it was decent rates. It was just an abundance. People were going nuts. Anybody see or read the book called The Big Short? Movie The Big Short, the book The Big Short? You saw the behind the scenes there, right? Maybe. And part of the problem was the subprime mortgage market and overconfidence in the housing sector. What could possibly go wrong? The logic was people will no way will people not pay their mortgages, right? There's going to be a certain small percentage, but not a very widespread one. Therefore, let's go ahead and stretch out a little more. As investors were willing to relax their requirements. They were willing to do what were called sometimes stated income loans, which are great for somebody in my position. Us independent contractors making 100% commission. We don't have W-2 income. Banks don't like to see us coming because we are in the business of minimizing our tax burden as much as possible. Legally, we can use legal means to show as little income on paper as possible so as to pay less taxes. But when it comes time to affording a house, the lender's like, you only make what? And you want to buy what? No. So it's always a balance in this business. When you're trying to buy something, you kind of have to take a hit and be like, okay, then I make this. I won't take the tax deduction so that I can bump up what I make. Therefore, you will bump up what you'll loan me. All of that could have been avoided with those stated income loans. Basically, you walk into the lender and they say, well, you want to buy this size house? It's going to be this much that you're going to have to make. Do you make that? Yes, I do. Okay, sign here. State your income. It was about that easy, right? Weren't that many requirements. Stated income. Just state your income, attest to this, and we feel confident you're going to pay us back. What could go wrong? Another thing that we saw back then were things like 125% loan to value ratio. Wait a minute. We were just dealing with like a 90% loan to value ratio, which meant the buyer bringing 10% down payment to closing. What's 125% ratio? That's more than 100. That means the buyer gets the keys and gets a check because the lender is so confident the house is going to appreciate up fast. Therefore, here's a check. You can go to Rooms to Go on your way to your new house. Here's the keys and some money because it's all going to work out just fine. What could go wrong? There was a lot of problems. There was a lot of overextending. And that subprime market, subprime means less than perfect credit, less than A paper, now B paper, maybe even C credit risk paper, people with lower and lower credit scores. But lenders were okay loaning to them because they didn't see that there was much in jeopardy until there was. Until there was so many of them, it just kind of got lopsided. A lot of defaults, a lot of foreclosures. Because another thing that was done was that pick a payment concept. The lender would say, well, your normal payment that will pay down your principal that goes toward both principal and interest is $1,800. But if you're having a tough month, we'll let you pay us $1,500 instead of $1,800, but that's an interest-only payment. And some people got a little hooked on that lower payment. It fit their budget better, but they weren't making any progress. And when you combine that with the values going down too, because the values declined, now they're not making any pay down of their loan amount and the values are dropping. So now when the value gets lower than what you owe the lender, and even if you did sell it, you can't make them whole again. You can't pay them back all that you owe. Now you've got defaults happening left and right. A lot of foreclosures, a lot of short sales, all because of overextension of risk, improper judgment of the likelihood of this risk based on a confidence in the housing sector that was proven to be something that could fail in a big way. That was the crisis. Some other things that were going wrong involved how we did things on our end as brokers. So you would occasionally have a dirty broker and a dirty appraiser and a dirty attorney, and they're all working together to defraud that investor person or entity that's funding the loan. The broker is lying. The appraiser is claiming it's worth more than it really is. The attorney is doing the paperwork. They might even show one version of the qualifying numbers that they're showing the investor, but it's really not true. They're doctoring the qualifying numbers. All of that stuff amounts to what is called loan fraud. And a big issue the Real Estate Commission warns us about is committing loan fraud. Loan fraud is a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison and $1 million fine. Loan fraud looks like lots of different things, but it basically is telling the lender on the closing statement something that's not true. So those numbers on the closing statement we're going to learn in chapter 12 are all of the dollars and cents for both sides, buyer and seller, coming and going. If you're putting something on there that's not true or leaving something off that you're supposed to disclose, that lender needs to know what is being spent by both sides, coming and going. What if the seller is giving the buyer $10,000 to go toward their down payment? It might be that if the buyer didn't have that from the seller, they can't afford the house. Well, that lender deserves to know this because that affects their true ability to not default. So therefore, we need to check with the lender. That's the overarching advice. The overarching theme in our role as brokers, when somebody's got a question about money or giving money from buyer to seller, seller to buyer, or agent to buyer, by the way, basically, if the buyer's making any money from any party in the transaction, the question is, what does the lender say? Run it by the lender. Will they allow it? And I believe a week or two ago, we might have even talked about the limitations. Certain loan types say that the max the seller can pay toward the buyer's closing cost is 3% of the loan amount. So you already know, let's check. We've already negotiated that the seller's paying $4,000 toward buyer's closing costs. And now we've had the inspections and the roof is leaking and it needs a bunch of stuff. So instead of having the seller fix those things, let's just have the seller give the buyer money. They can't just give them money under the table in a mason jar in the waiting room of the closing office. They've got to give it to them and tell the lender that they're giving it to them. But the lender might say, oh, wait a minute, you're already giving them $4,000. You want to give them another $5,000 for repairs? Well, that exceeds the maximum 3% of the loan amount that we're allowing the seller to pay for the buyer. And now you have to figure out another solution. You, the broker. Oh, we can't give them any more closing costs. We've already maxed that number out. What can we do? We could lower the price. The lender might not like that because they already have an appraisal and they're already far enough along in the process. It's kind of a lot of trouble to redraw things and it would kind of be starting over. But hey, deal's either going to make it or break it. It's either going to happen or not. All of these things come into the picture. So another thing that came as a result of all of this 2008 nonsense was the fraud, right? So the dirty appraiser. An appraiser we'll learn I forgot what chapter is coming up. It's about valuation. But that appraiser decides what it's worth based on similar things that have sold recently. And so there's an opinion involved here. In fact, at the top of the report, the appraisal report, it says this is the appraiser's opinion of value. It is not science. It looks like it. It looks like a big Excel spreadsheet with a bunch of numbers and adjustments, but there's a lot of opinion and that person's estimate involved. Two different appraisers that don't see the contract price would come up with two different numbers of value. The weird thing that I've always kind of questioned, and just the way it is though, is the appraiser does see the contract price. When they do their work, they already know what the sale price has been agreed to between buyer and seller. They are held to a standard just like we are. They are held to a standard by their appraisal board. They can't just go crazy. But, around that time, leading up to all that, some appraisers were. They were putting too much of an inflated value. They were modifying the adjustments fraudulently, extending them past a point of rationale to be able to justify, and they were just lying. And so part of the problem was the bank, the lender, could hire the appraiser directly. The lender would say, hey, appraiser, we always send you our business. We want you to go appraise this one. But I noticed you brought it back a little light. It's a contract for $300,000, but you're appraising it for $290,000. We really want to make this one work. Are you sure you can't bump that up a little bit? Maybe add another comp, maybe reconsider your adjustments. Directly, they could talk to them because, appraiser, if you can't somehow make that one work, I just don't know that we're going to be able to send you any more business. Is that just not ripe for fraud? That arrangement, right? So that's different. They changed the industry because so much of that went on. Now the lender can't directly talk to the appraiser. They can't even order it directly from the appraiser. They have to talk to a third-party ordering company. That person reaches out to the appraiser. That way it keeps a more than arm's length kind of thing so that let's make sure that we don't have the temptation of undue influence or fraud there. All of that stuff. Plus, borrowers were confused about the type of loan they were getting. Lenders did not have a standard way to disclose their loan fees. They were not required to. So two different lenders might tell them in different ways. And one of our jobs as brokers was to help the borrower understand and translate one lender's loan estimate or good faith estimate from another's. You can imagine, what if one lender says, your payment is going to be $1,800, and the other lender says, your payment's going to be $1,500. Which one are they going to pick? The 15, obviously. But then in the fine print, the one giving them 15 says, this loan requires 3 discount points. The one with the 18 has no discount points. Are they going to like that monthly payment now that they have to bring $12,000 to closing? Probably not as much, right? So now that is not possible. The required disclosures have certain places within them that you can see every lender's stuff. Oh, here's where discount points are disclosed. And this loan has them and this loan doesn't. So this 15 doesn't look quite so good as it used to compared to that 18 because it involves more upfront money. Because there are discount points instead of 0. It was much easier for lenders to hide things like that, hide those fees and put in what we call fluff fees. So all of that kind of changed. We did it better. And the Federal Reserve, the Dodd-Frank Act that you'll see in your material was passed to help change the way things are done in terms of qualifying for loans because it had got so fast and loose. People were not being careful and it was hurting borrowers. They didn't understand the consequences of interest-only payments. They didn't understand making choices about qualifying and what kinds of loan they should get because they didn't have proper disclosure. So yeah, we had a lot of problems. We still have problems. In fact, I think some of these stated income kinds of subprime products are starting to be renamed and creep on back in a little bit. Investors are starting to feel, lenders are starting to feel confident again in the housing market. And so sometimes things get repackaged and put back out, and only those with long enough memory who's either learned it by being in it or learned it from studying are going to be like, that might not be the best option. Like an adjustable rate mortgage. Anybody going to give someone advice to have an adjustable rate mortgage? Your rate might change next year. This is what your payment is going to be this year at this rate, but next year on the anniversary date, it's going to adjust, maybe up, maybe down, based on like a 10-year treasury bill at the time. Are they bad? No. They serve a purpose. Might help somebody get in a house, as long as they have an exit plan before it adjusts to a point that is outside of their affordability. In fact, credit unions are great across the board. They usually take good care of their members. However, quite often the home loan, the mortgage you can get through your credit union is only an adjustable rate. Sometimes that's all they have to offer you. So your borrower needs to consider that and think, do I want it or not? Am I so convinced I have to have fixed that, okay, we're going to skip the credit union. We're going to go looking for fixed rates only. Problem with an adjustable is it might be affordable the first year, but when it adjusts, it ends up adjusting up. And if that level you were at the first year is so close to your tolerance ability to afford, maybe you put too much optimism in getting a raise. Your financial position will be better in a year. Everybody overestimates how much better it's going to be in a year, right? And underestimates how much better it can be next month. And, you treat things differently in 12 months than you do in one. So things didn't change. And now you already could barely afford the lower payment. Now the rate goes up. Now your payment goes up. That adjustable just caused a lot of defaults. People got overly optimistic. It worked against them because life didn't get better financially for them. Now, conventional loans. These are kind of geared more toward better credit borrowers because they require more down payment. And if you don't have higher down payment, you can't get one. But with that said, it doesn't mean that it's like as much as 20%. Some people, even Gary Vaynerchuk, anybody heard of him? Even he is working under some wrong information. He's kind of talking about you have to have 20% down payment. No, you don't. Even on a conventional loan, there are some quite often that are 5% minimum down payment, maybe even 3%. Depends on the investor, depends on the program, depends on who they're trying to help. They might be trying to help a certain segment of demographic that with a certain loan program that offers and allows for lower. But minimum typically for conventional loans, 5%, 10, 20% down payment, but pretty good credit, pretty decent credit. If you don't have a certain level of credit score, conventional paper or conventional loans just not going to work for you. It's not an option. Then you're going to have to shop elsewhere, maybe an FHA loan, which allows for a lower credit score. It also allows for a lower down payment, as little as 3.5%. So right off the bat, if your credit's not great and you have not much money, I would still try. Have the lender still check into conventional options for your buyer. But if they don't work, drop back and punt and try FHA. But let's talk about conventional. Because they are gravitated toward higher credit scores, lower risk borrowers, more likely historically to pay back what they promise, the government doesn't insure or guarantee them. They are lower risk. They're sold in the secondary market more frequently because they're such good risk. They're such a good product. They're a nice, shiny car instead of an old beater that's got, a bad smell, like low credit. So good credit, nice and crispy clean, they're going to be more likely to get sold because they're easier to sell. Lower LTV, less risk to the lender. A buyer who's got 20% of their own money in a house is much less likely to walk away from their house and let it go into foreclosure than somebody that only has 3.5% of their own money into the house. It has to meet guidelines if it's a conforming loan. A conforming loan is your typical price point based on average prices. There's certain guidelines required, underwriting guidelines that must be met, which make it easier to package up with a bunch of others similar to it, similar risk levels to sell on the secondary market. But what about the big ones, like $1 million loan, $1 million mortgage? Well, that's outside of a conforming loan. It's called a non-conforming loan. It's also called a jumbo loan because it's so large. It comes with certain risks of its own. Does that person truly qualify to borrow $1 million? So there's a jumbo mortgage option as well, but it requires other things, different things. But your typical bread and butter conforming loan has a certain level of guidelines in place to make it easily sellable on the secondary market. Now, What if you have less than 20% of your own money in the house? What if you put less than 20% down payment? That lender would rather you have at least 20% of your own money. So much so that if you do put less than 20% down, they're going to charge you a payment. They're going to make you take out an insurance policy. You're going to have your house payment, your PITI, but you're also going to have an insurance policy payment too. And it's called private mortgage insurance. So what you need to know for the class, for the test, is private mortgage insurance is required by the lender if you have less than 20% equity in the property, if you put less than 20% down payment. And, over time, though, your equity can increase, either because the property appreciates or you put money in it and raise the value because you added a room, or you pay down your loan. All of those things can affect how much equity you have in it. When your equity in the property hits 20%, because maybe you started by putting down 10% and it's grown and now your equity is up to 20, the lender can drop off the private mortgage insurance. They don't require it anymore. It's in place not to benefit you, the buyer, but to benefit the lender if that buyer defaults. Private mortgage insurance, here's what you need to know, is to benefit the lender in case the buyer defaults on the loan. It's a way for them to help recover their losses. They, the lender. So who gets to pay for it? The buyer, because it's required for them to get the loan, right? So they get to pay PMI, private mortgage insurance, because they're putting 20% or less than 20% down. And for the entire time they own it, while they have less than 20% equity in it, they've got to maintain this private mortgage insurance policy. But eventually, when they, for various reasons, get more or 20, actually, it drops off automatically when you hit 22% equity. But when you think you might have hit 20% equity in the property, you could contact your lender and say, hey, I think I might be there, drop it. And they'll say, okay, you got to prove it. They're probably going to require you to get an appraisal and show them proof that you are at 20% or more equity. Then they'll drop it. How much are we talking? It might be another 100 or two, a couple $100 a month. Depends on lots of things. But that's kind of the level of dollars extra payment we're talking for PMI on top of your PITI. So it's additional security for the lender in the case that the buyer defaults on the loan. Now, a lender's also going to make their loan based on the loan value. The loan they're making, the LTV, is going to be based on either the sale price that you're paying or the appraisal value. And then we'll call it a day. But real quick, what if it appraises for less than the agreed upon sale price? That's the number the lender is going to loan you. The lender says, I'll loan you 90% LTV. It's going to be 90% of the sale price as long as it appraises for the sale price. If it only appraises for, like, instead of sale price of 300, but it appraises for 290, they're going to loan you 90% of 290,000. Whichever's lower, sale price or appraised value. Getting into the nitty gritty here, make sure you've covered this stuff in all of 11 by the time we come back, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Let me know if you have any questions. See you soon. Take care. Bye.